Okay, so I wanted to begin and end this video with a thank you to Jason David Frank. For the handful of you not in the know, the news broke several days prior to me writing this, and maybe weeks from when you see it, that the man practically synonymous with Power Rangers and the legacy thereof has passed away. At first, I wasn't quite sure how to take this all in. Maybe it's an overused sentiment, but to me, it really didn't feel real for a long stretch, and there were a couple tense internet hours where it still could have been just that, as an entire community of confused fans collectively held their breath. It's understandably hard to convey the depth of what this all means to the Ranger community, the fandom, to myself, and most significantly, the people closest to JDF. And even if I could somehow piece it all together, it would be irresponsible, to say the least, to even attempt to speak to the complicated array of feelings felt by anyone other than myself, especially as someone who never knew him personally, despite my life being unquestionably impacted by his work. So, I'm handling this the only way I've ever known how. I don't suspect that this will be an especially long video, but my hope is that it will be, if nothing else, a genuine tribute to the man responsible for the first ever Halloween costume I picked out for myself some 25 plus years ago, and a comment space filled to the brim with personal stories, tales, and anecdotes that all of you might possess about the man. Apologies in advance to those of you who have already heard me discuss Tommy Oliver and JDF more broadly in past videos, as there will inevitably be some crossover here. The character of Tommy Oliver has gone through a lot of phases in my life, as did MMPR more generally. At most stages of my life, save a couple years out of the loop here and there, I was always keeping up on what PR was doing and how the latest season was shaping up. All this was well before I had the honor and pleasure of creating video essays for all of you wonderful people, and from then on, following PR became second nature, for better or worse. Those various stages always left me with an oddly polarizing opinion on MMPR, the various Rangers thereof, and the legacies both combined came to embody. There were times when I thought I couldn't stand the early days of PR, caught up in the awkward and at times honestly unintelligible fandom rationalizations of its so-called out-of-date aesthetics and tropes. Likewise, there have been times when embracing all the things MMPR truly was allowed me to appreciate the inherent goofiness and charming characterizations a whole lot more than even during the 90s. In the now, however, I see MMPR and all its various team iterations as something truly worth celebrating, and having a far greater level of mastery of its particular material and a touch more depth than most would give it credit for. And a lot of those feelings apply directly to Tommy, what with him being the most long-standing and most talismanic figure of the early days, and even beyond every now and then. And as I have once said, he deserved to be all of that. His dedication and energy is something quoted and backed up by a large number of people who have worked with him over the years. And as time went on, I found the ideas and core conceits that end up defining Tommy, however intentionally, to be one of the more fascinating aspects of PR as a whole. Ideas that, for a long stretch of early comics, Boom definitely tapped into as well. I appreciate the idea that there was always this undercurrent of trouble that Tommy Oliver as a character felt the need to be on top of. This goes a long way to explaining his far more Zordon-esque role in Forever Red, as well as his in-universe legacy that later team-up stories like Dimensions in Danger and Legendary Battle to a degree lean into. On one hand, it created a character that could be loyal to a fault, and Soul of the Dragon smartly leans into the pros and cons of all of that. But on the other hand, it also created something of a mythic figure, one that would always be there, one that could always be counted on when the time came. Granted, this couldn't always literally be the case, but it always felt like the case, and that matters a little bit more. Typing this all out now, and inevitably recording what I've written for all to see, it just creates this sense that there will always be so much more to say, too much more. I could talk for a long time about his return to full action in Dino Thunder, and how much his gravitas added to the season, a season that really does nail the elements inherent to an anniversary season all without technically being one. I could talk for days about how JDF would have been even more involved in proceedings had the Disney sale not created a wildly different direction for Rangers. Hell, Zeo alone has a near exponential amount of Tommy high points. But I think that, as well as his time in Green and White of course, warrants its own space and its own time. But in this space, and this time, I want to highlight more generally that the fact that all of these various angles and stories and touchpoints exist across multiple forms of media is a testament to a man who gave everything he had and more to a franchise and the fans that raised him up. And I also wanted to take the time to say, given the reported nature of how he passed, that help is always available to those who reach out for it. I don't always pound the table for as many causes as I should, but mental health is way up there for me. I'm not going to get into the territory of trying to diagnose anything or the truly vile shit I've seen, where some people are pointing the finger at others for JDF's fate. All of that is not stuff I should or want to be touching. But if you are someone who might need help for even remotely similar reasons, the resources are out there. You don't have to go through it alone, and maybe someday you'll reach a point in your life where you can say you got through it and came out better on the other side. So, before all of this gets too long in the tooth, allow me a few more moments to share with you the one and sadly only personal anecdote I have for JDF. I was really hoping to meet him at PMC back when I staffed it a couple years ago, but between his understandably massive line and my schedule, I just couldn't quite make it happen. But somehow, some way, a fellow staffer of mine, bless her soul, was able to get a card signed for me by him despite all of that and had it ready for me the very same day. Needless to say, it carries an added layer of meaning now. He could have easily said no to that request because I don't even want to think about how long his PMC itinerary must have been, but he still took a few seconds out of his day to sign something for a man he'll never know, who honestly would not even have this channel or this following without his incalculable influence on a franchise I grew all the way up with. The selflessness of both him and my co-staffer on that day is not something I'll ever soon forget. So, as it begins, so shall it end. Thank you all for watching, and thank you, Jason David Frank, for everything.